Welcome to Real Turkey Show. We're broadcasting live from foggy Istanbul. Well, not necessarily live, more like comatose because it's cold and very dreary. Today, our first video is about the 3S curses of Turkey. 3S: Syria, S-400s, and sanctions by US. These are political issues that vex our President Erdogan and have potential implications that can derail our fragile economy. Let's start with Syria, then move on to S-400s and Mr. Erdogan's trip to the United States, which was a waste of plane tickets, to make a long story short. Turkey decided to buy an anti-missile system because I think we're surrounded with countries that want to rain missiles on us. I look at our geography and only Iran has missiles and they're our closest allies right now. Nevertheless, so we decided to buy Russian missile systems, S-400s, which according to experts are really more accurate than the American-made Patriots. But the problem is we're a NATO country and it's just not cool to buy Russian-made weapons. And that point has been made to us repeatedly by several high-level NATO and American officials, but we insisted. So the American Senate says they will impose sanctions on Turkey if we decide to activate those. And activation will happen within the next few months. These sanctions could have crippling effects on the Turkish economy because they involve not only our military, but the banks which finance the military, the energy sector, etc., etc. Why Mr. Erdogan insists on buying S-400s? Because he thinks our Air Force is in cahoots with this pastor, Fethullah Gulen, who organized the 2016 coup. And if he has patriots, he will be bombed again in his palace. I know this doesn't make sense, but honestly, there is no other reason to buy Russian-made S-400 missiles. The second issue is Syria. Clearly, the Syrian war has damaged Turkey and Jordan more than any other country. We have 3.6 million Syrian migrants, which are becoming a social issue. Moreover, Assad is not very happy with Turkey. We prolonged the war. And on the other side is a Kurdish entity, which is affiliated with the terror organization PKK. So we have been conquering the small districts or cantons in Syria. And our latest incursion was to northeast in a military campaign called Operation Teespring. The idea by Mr. Erdogan was to conquer an area the size of 440 kilometers by 100 kilometers and resettle 1, possibly 2 million Syrian refugees. But it didn't work because Assad, Russians, and Americans screamed very loudly. So the area that Turkish forces could occupy was limited to 120 kilometers by 30 kilometers, which is simply not enough to settle 2 million Syrian refugees. At most, we could settle 500,000. But the problem is none of the Syrian refugees want to go back there because the safe zone is not safe, simply because Kurds live there and Syrian refugees are Arabs. Would you want to go to a country where no one likes you? Moreover, Assad's forces are to the west and east of the safe zone. Syrian refugees are afraid of Assad. And there are car bombs every day. So our President Erdogan goes to the United States to solve these issues. He meets with Trump. Trump loves him. I don't know why Trump loves him, but Trump loves Kim Jong-un too, and Putin too. So apparently he likes strong macho men, and our Mr. President is as macho as it gets on this planet. So they have a very fruitful meeting. Trump also invites 5 American senators, Mr. Risch, Mr. Graham, as well as 3 others whose names I can't remember, but influential Republican senators. And Mr. Erdogan has a heart-to-heart with them. According to Turkish press, he taught them a lesson about the realities. American senators had a different version of the story. Anyhow, we need to go by the story that American senators are telling, simply because they are the ones who are going to levy sanctions on Turkey. According to their version of the story, if Turkey, well, it's not the Turkish forces, but the allied forces, the Syrian National Army, commits atrocities against the Kurdish civilians, if we try to expand the safe zone, or if we try to activate S-400s, there will be excruciating sanctions on Turkey. Turkey denies that any atrocities have been committed on Kurdish civilians. Turkey wants to expand the safe zone. In fact, Erdogan has reportedly asked Trump to take control of the oil wells, which are currently held by the Kurds and the American soldiers, so he can finance the resettlement. And his spokesperson, Mr. Kalin, said, well, we didn't buy these S-400s to put them in a warehouse. Of course we're going to use them. So American sanctions remain on the agenda. In other words, our relationship with the United States has not improved. Clearly, for Turkey's national interests, Mr. Erdogan is free to pick up a fight with anyone he wants to. But the problem is, Turkey is a very foreign credit dependent country, and United States largely controls how much credit countries like Turkey get. If United States decides to impose sanctions on Turkey, one implication would be that American banks or European banks which do transactions in the United States would not wish to lend to Turkey. For a country that needs to roll over or refinance $170 billion of debt within the next 12 months, that's a serious problem. Last time something like that happened, Turkish lira depreciated 30% against the dollar. So it's really a very thorny problem, and the only solution is for Mr. Erdogan to keep the issue of S-400s alive for domestic consumption, but to defer activation until American elections in November 2020. If Trump is re-elected, and Republicans retain the Senate, then he has more maneuvering room, and he can perhaps persuade the Trump and the Republicans to activate the S-400s and get away with it without sanctions. If not, then he'll have to make a decision soon, because the senators are getting impatient. The problem is, if he avoids the sanctions by mothballing S-400s, he is going to get in trouble with Putin, who is going to want tribute for his S-400s. As far as Syria goes, the problems are bigger, in the sense that all the opinion polls show one of the reasons why people don't vote for AKP is because they're sick and tired of Syrian refugees. I'm not taking sides here. People don't like immigrants. Some of them are bigots. Sometimes the immigrants are creating troubles. I couldn't care less. The political realities, as long as those 3.6 million Syrian refugees are here, Erdogan stands a higher chance of losing next elections. As well, they're a burden on our social welfare system. And as the winter begins, you might see from the camera that it's still autumn here, foliage season, in fact. But when the winter starts and heating bills come due, Syrian refugees and their financing is going to be a problem. Overall, paying for the defense of the Syrian districts we have occupied is going to be a huge cost for the Turkish treasury, which is nearly empty. To make things short, these three S's are becoming not only a political problem, but also a major drag on the Turkish economy. And unless Mr. Erdogan navigates very carefully and solves these three problems, the chances of a recovery in the Turkish economy or chances of a recovery in his sagging support in the polls are impossible. You have listened to another broadcast of the Real Turkey channel, presented by Mr. Atilla Yaşılara. If you like us, subscribe us and recommend us to your friends and enemies. Bye bye now.